Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the League of Women Voters First Friday. Glad to see such a nice turnout. We have a really interesting program today. This is our first forum, and we will have another one next month, and next month we're planning them. I'm the convener of the League of Women Voters of Lexington. The League is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to promoting awareness and understanding of public policy. All League events are free and open to the public. Today's speaker on trash, recycling, and composting is David Pinsonneault, Lexington DPW Director. Dave was recently appointed to serve on the National Board of Directors for the American Public Works Association, and I think a round of applause. He has a Bachelor of Science in Forestry from the University of New Hampshire. He has over 30 years of municipal leadership experience. He has been the Public Works Director in Lexington since 2016. In that capacity, he oversees employees and work tasks for all public works divisions, including administration, engineering, park, forestry, cemetery, street lights, water, sewer, highways, equipment, snow, and environmental services. So any questions you have?
And anything else they throw.
Right? That's as of today, that's what you do. With him today is Maggie Beard, who is the, what's your title?
Sustainability and Resilience Officer.
Sustainability and Resilience Officer. So we're pleased to welcome here and thank you to both of them, to Dave and Maggie, for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. What we wanted to do today is there's a lot of information out there about trash and recycling. A lot of things that are coming from the state in regards to what now can be considered trash or recycling. Things coming out of the waste stream and rising costs for that whole entire program, which is funded through the tax levy. So we wanted to kind of go over kind of where we're at, some possible things that we could do in the future to enhance that and help position Lexington when those things come down, whether it be mandates or, again, the rising costs. And then get your feedback, because we want this to be an ongoing discussion in the community. So there's nothing that's going to happen tomorrow. But we wanted to start that feedback so that as we look at the FY27 budget, we can kind of have a sense of where the town needs to go to meet all of those requirements. So again, the town manager, I think 2 years ago, formed a waste reduction task force. 3 years ago? 4 years ago. Okay. Wow. All right. It's been that long. Well, yeah, then COVID and everything else, but, so this group has been looking at, different options, analyzing the programs, kind of gathering that information, and now we're at the point where we need to get that out into the community, so, that's something that we want to do, and, so today, as I mentioned, we're gonna go over what we're currently doing, the external influences that we have on that, some strategies to reduce that, what we can do to help that get accomplished in Lexington, and then certainly we want discussion, we want your questions, and if we can't answer them today, then we want to get that information back out to you. So if we go from there, so we're going to talk about trash. So a lot of people might have seen this. We use it in our budget presentation. So it's just a snapshot of what we've been doing, the trends in both trash tonnage collected and recycling tonnage collected. And, you can see over the course, there's been a few spikes. Most everybody here will remember those heavy rainstorms we had back in 2010. That generated a lot of trash. People got flooded out. There were a lot of things that got ruined. And at that point, a lot of those bulky things and that type of items could be put in the trash. So we saw a spike there, but then kind of coming back down and evening out a little bit. We had another spike right in that 2019, 2020, and that was a lot of it due to COVID. People were home. Let's redo our basement. Let's redo this family room. Let's clean out the garage. So we saw another spike. Started to tail off, and we see this longer tailing off to where 2023, we were a little over 8,000 tons. That's got a lot to do with the implementation of the pilot food waste program. So we'll talk about that, but food waste is one of the heaviest components in your trash. Not only that, but food waste can be also, if it's recycled properly, can be turned into a usable product, like up at the, we take the yard waste and grass clippings, brush up at the compost site, we turn that into usable compost, both for the community and for different projects, and that's a product that's sold, but the food waste can then be turned into a compostable product that you can use in gardens and things like that. So it has a good use for that. We just have to get it out of the trash stream. And Maggie will talk a little bit more about, there are some regulations already about food waste having to come out of certain places. So we'll talk about that. If you look at the recycling one, which is this bottom line, you know, Lexington has done a pretty good job at recycling. There's a lot of opportunities for that. It is trending downwards in tonnage, but that's a function of a couple of things. One is paper. You know, you don't see newspapers really that much anymore, and if you do, they're, you know, maybe that thick as opposed to what they used to be like that, and that's a heavy weight component to your trash. So just some trends there. We are still recycling, you know, quite a bit, and again, there's opportunities for that as we move forward. So I just wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of how the town has been doing, and this goes back to 2009. Over the course of that. So when you look at, you know, what we're doing as far as, you know, trying to get some of those things out of the trash, you know, we have the curbside yard waste, we have the single stream recycling, we have all of the different drop-offs up at Hartwell Avenue. You know, there's metals, books, and Robert can probably expand on that. It's in the trash and recycling brochure that goes out. So there's about, you know, if you look at that number, you know, 60% is reused or recycled. That's a critical component when you get into what we have to pay to have that trash disposed of at the incinerator. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, you know, the 40%, and that was the 2022 number, I think, for trash, or maybe 21, I'm sorry, 21 for trash. So, you know, so that number has come down. Again, that helps get some of these things that don't need to be trash out of that stream, but it helps in cost relation as well. If you go to the next one. So what do we still have that's in the trash? And this is a composition of what we have, and we do have these audits done that tells us what, you know, what are some of the things that we're bringing. You can see food and organics, compostable paper, that's a pretty good percentage there. And again, if we can get that out of the trash stream, that helps us in a lot of different ways. So that's something that we really want to look at, and it's why we started that pilot curbside program for the food waste, but we also have the drop-off areas as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. And then the rest is scattered through a number of different components that just end up in the trash. So again, we'll talk about composting. The green team, Lexington Schools green teams have done a great job of getting that program into the schools. And Maggie will talk about why that's important in a little bit. We do have the drop-off locations. We have them here at this building, and we have them over at our building at 201 Bedford Street, and Brookhaven has started a program as well with the drop-off for the residents there. This program is as easy as you call or email Maggie's office. She sends you a code to the lock, and you just have to dump the right amount of, or the proper food waste into those baskets. That's as easy as that. There's no cost, there's nothing extra that you need to do for there. We have been funded the last 2 years for the curbside composting program. We started out at 2,000 households. We got the money in the budget to do 4,000. Now this was through the ARPA funding. So separate funding, so this coming for the request we're gonna bring to town meeting this year is to actually put this program into the operating budget. So it's been funded from a different source. We think that it's a good program that we need to continue doing, and we want to offer that to residents, and hopefully we keep building that number up. So, so we're at about 25% of residents participating in that. And again, this one's free. Again, you do have to sign in. Right now, we're contracted with Black Earth Composting, and so it's a sign-in process. You get your information, you come down to 201 Bedford Street, you get a green bin, you get bags, you get the tabletop, and then you're able to go ahead and put that out on a weekly basis and get the food waste out of the trash stream, which again helps us in a number of ways. So just to look at some of that diversion, the tonnage that's diverted, you can see, going with the curbside collections, then adding in the LexSort is the drop-off program, so that group was instrumental in helping to get that off the ground, and so we've worked very closely with them to continue that. Then adding in all of the different schools. We don't have the full numbers for 2024 yet, but you can see 2023. That's a lot of tonnage now that is not going to the incinerator. It's getting recycled in different ways and turned into a usable compost product. And it takes that out of that cost of bringing that material there, so.
Yeah, and this is only to July of '24, so just seeing the growth of the compost program, this could be double the size by the end of the year.
Yeah, so it's really been a good program, and I will say that the majority of residents that we have talked to and partnered with have taken on to some of these things to try to reduce the trash tonnage, to look at some of these other solutions, but we need to get that more throughout the entire community. So, and that's why this is kind of our kickoff with meetings with different groups. We appreciate Margaret coordinating that for today, but we plan on doing a number of public meetings with various groups in order to keep going over this and getting feedback, so we know kind of where we want a program to go. Okay, I will keep going. We're going to be switching back and forth here. So some of the external influences on what we do in the trash and recycling world. So right now, DEP has come on with some things. Mattresses and box springs have come out of the trash stream. So it used to be something you could put into the trash. The packer truck would take it and it would just go in with the trash. That's come out of that waste stream, which means we now have to pay for that service. And I will say Robert Baldwin, our environmental services superintendent, he did a great job of negotiating a good price for Lexington. And we'll get into that. I'll show you that in a minute. But one of the things where, our number is going down for tonnage, but the price per ton keeps going up. So there's fewer and fewer disposal facilities that are available in Massachusetts. We envision down the road, it's going to be that they may close almost all of those facilities in Massachusetts, and our trash and everyone else's will have to be railed out to another location, some other state or some other location that the state sets up. So if we get to that point, those costs are really going to go sky high. Probably doubling and tripling what we're paying now per ton, maybe even more. So it's another reason why we want to really get a handle on the trash, what we're doing, and how we can, keep that number down and diverting what can be diverted from that. So something to really take a look at. Right now we're looking at this year we're somewhere around $88 a ton, to where next year we're projecting about $110 a ton. That's what we're putting in the budget that's going to be coming forward. So you can see the jump in those numbers. So overall, that disposal fee cost in the budget's actually going up some because of the cost, even though we're driving the tonnage down. So we need to continue to drive that tonnage number down so we can try to even that out a little bit. The other thing is collection costs. We were fortunate that 2 years ago, we went out to bid for our trash and recycling pickup cost. The company that we had was set to charge a really high rate. We were able to negotiate with a different company on a 5-year contract, so we started at a lower rate, but those are gonna exponentially go up, as you can see, so. Those numbers will continue to rise, and that's the collection cost. So there's two pieces to the trash, and the recycling for that matter. There's the collection, so we have to pay somebody to go out and collect all of that from the curbside. But then there's also the disposal. So once they have it, they burn it to the incinerator for the trash, and that gets disposed of. I don't know if we have one on the recycling, but I'll just touch on the recycling. So I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, Robert, or so, back to about 8 years or so ago, Lexington was actually getting funds for recycling. So whatever was collected, whatever hauler was collecting it, they had a market for it. They would process that recycling, and then Lexington was getting a percentage of that, a share in that revenue. Since that, when the recycling markets all crashed, we actually now have to pay that as a disposal cost, because for most of the haulers, there's a lot of material they collect as recycling, but they don't have markets for it. So now go ahead, Robert.
I just want to point out, as we're talking about the collection costs also include the curbside yard waste being brought to Hartwell. So we're not paying any disposal on that. Most communities are paying anywhere between $20 and $50 a ton, depending on where and if they can get rid, transport it. In addition to that, we take all of that great yard waste and the brush, and we make it into products like leaf mulch, half-inch screen compost, bark. We actually make our own bark mulch, and last year we made almost $1.1 million in total revenue. And since 2001, we have generated nearly $12 million in total revenues. So we're not only insulating ourselves from disposing of our yard waste at a facility that, now you have to use those diesel trucks to take that 10 miles north or 10 miles south on 128 or wherever it's going to go. So the Hartwell Avenue site, in addition to being a revenue generator for solar energy, which is phenomenal, we also have the ability of making revenue on the yard waste materials that landscapers bring to us and pay to dispose of.
And so I'll just clarify that just a little bit. So Hartwell Avenue is set up as a revolving fund. So it's not revenue that necessarily goes into the general fund. So it is, but it funds that operation. And it is that avoided cost of having to bring that material elsewhere. So it really is a good facility that's been managed well, and we're able to do that. Those types of
we have
things.
$700,000 still remaining in the revenue account.
Yeah, and that funds the operation of that facility. So when we need a new piece of equipment or something like that. Yes, sir.
Maybe I didn't hear it, but what kind of processing goes on at the Hartwell site?
So we make compost, bark mulch, leaf mulch. There's a number of items that we take that yard waste that's collected curbside and from landscapers bringing it in, and we're able to turn that into a usable product that is either sold back out or is available free of charge to residents. So that's been a very good program and facility.
Thank you.
For us. You're welcome. Thank you for the question. So again, some of the state waste bans, and we just see more of these coming down the road. As I mentioned, the mattresses and box springs. So we've connected with the company again. We were able to negotiate a much lower price. We're at about $45 per box spring or mattress. A lot of other communities are in that $110 to $130 cost, because it's now a disposal item. You can't just put it in the trash. It has to be separated out. Textiles, fortunately, and again, Robert was able to negotiate, so those are picked up at the curb by appointment, and there's no cost to the town for that service. I'll let Maggie talk a little bit about the commercial food waste for the institutions.
Sure, yeah, so one additional state waste ban is compost or food waste in large institutions and commercial facilities can no longer be thrown in the trash if you generate more than a half a ton of that type of waste per week. So a number of facilities in Lexington are affected by that. The high school, the 2 middle schools, large housing facilities like Brookhaven. So not only are we seeing more diversion through our curbside program, but also some of these larger facilities are finding ways to divert kitchen waste, cafeteria waste. So that's also had an impact on increasing our composting rates.
Yeah, and one of the things, if, when we work with the state, is we see them expanding this program even into residential down the road. So it is something that eventually we're all gonna have to be partaking in. We just see that occurring as we go through. But, they do these waste bans. I think we had, a couple months to when they did the mattress one. It just came out, and now we had to figure out a way to take care of that. So, working with those kinds of things. The environmental impacts, Robert mentioned with the diesel trucks that are used, 4% of the greenhouse gas emissions are from the waste. It's incinerated in North Andover. That gets put into a landfill in Shrewsbury, which now affects environmental justice communities. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, the state has identified different populations in different communities that are affected either by their income, housing, whether they're minorities or not, things like that, and that it seems a lot of these facilities are targeted in those areas. So the state's really taking a look at that and how can we do something differently there. When food waste goes in, again, you're taking those nutrients away. You're not getting that back into the soil, which helps hold that soil. Can affect farms, and again, then requiring more inputs because you don't have that material available to put on there. So, that really making waste, we really need to look at how we can do better in that regard as we move forward.
Now it's me.
All right, I'll turn it over to Maggie now. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, Dave got the harder part of the presentation because he got to talk about all of the challenges and kind of external impacts to our system, and I get the more fun part, getting to talk about how we can improve. Because there are a lot of proven, very effective methods to reduce waste, and so I'm going to go through what some of those are and what they could look like in Lexington. So first, before going into kind of future potential strategies, there are a lot of things that we can be doing today that are already in place. We touched on a couple times the free curbside composting program. If anyone in this room is not enrolled, please come talk to me after and I'll let you know how to sign up for that. Because you're here, you might be more interested in waste, you might already be composting. So if that's the case, please tell 5 neighbors about the program, how easy it is. Because we really want to increase the numbers. There's still some spots left in that program. In terms of harder to recycle items, we're lucky in Lexington to have the Hartwell compost facility, so you can bring things like bikes, oversized cardboard, propane tanks, all sorts of different things that you may not know what to do with. You can drop off at Hartwell composting facility. And then removing things from the waste stream entirely by donating them is a great way to go. We have a Goodwill trailer in the Grace Chapel parking lot, so that's a great way to drop off still in good condition items that you no longer need. And on the town website, there's also a list of a lot of different organizations you can donate various items to. Again, take advantage of the curbside and textile mattress collection. You can either schedule pickups at your home, or for the textiles, there's also bins at all of the schools where you can bring old clothing and other textiles. And then a smaller one here, but just making a practice of using reusable water bottles, silverware, Tupperware. There's a lot of great products out there these days that you can eliminate using plastic water bottles, plastic utensils, things like that. So those were kind of the things that were already in place, and I want to focus even more on kind of where we can go in the future. So back in 2022, we started a zero waste planning process that we completed in 2023, and it identified some of the key strategies that we can use to have a sizable impact on our community waste production. So some of those top strategies included the townwide curbside composting, which we're already implementing, but other strategies included automated curbside waste collection, so using the automated arms on the trucks. I'll talk a bit more about what that means later. Things like moving to an alternating week trash collection, so still having weekly compost and recycling, but trash only once a week to encourage more diversion from the trash stream. Another is pay-as-you-throw trash collection. I'm going to talk a whole lot more about that. Don't be scared off by the name. We'll dive into exactly what that means. And then finally, expanding reuse collection for bulky waste. So finding more items that we can dispose of and recycle. So probably the one that's stuck in your mind the most from that list is pay-as-you-throw. And that's really what we're going to talk a lot about today. Because there can be some misconceptions about what that means. So what is pay-as-you-throw? It's a waste management system where households are charged based on the amount of trash they dispose of. This model encourages waste reduction and recycling by making disposal costs directly proportional to the volume of waste generated. So another way to think about this is you're paying for what you use. It's not adding an extra cost for waste, because right now waste is paid through the town budget through your taxes. So you're currently paying for waste. This is just another way to structure that, and we'll talk a bit more about what that looks like. But it is currently a very popular model. 155 out of 351 Massachusetts municipalities are already using these types of systems. So there's many ways to structure this kind of system, and I'll outline a couple of them. So full pay-as-you-throw is any waste that you're generating, you're paying some sort of fee based on that. So it could be a standard bin size that you pay for each disposal of that, or it could be in bags, like program approved bags, and you pay per bag you produce. In these kind of systems, all waste goes into the approved bags or containers. Kind of a step down from that is a hybrid pay-as-you-throw system, and a lot of these systems, everyone will get a 35-gallon cart, and often that any waste generated in that cart will be picked up for free, and you'll only be kind of charged that extra fee for any waste above and beyond that first cart. And households can purchase program approved bags for that overflow waste, or can purchase an extra bin. There's lots of ways that can go. For both of these, it could also include an option for a hardship program to subsidize bags for lower income households, because we want this to be an equitable system. So that's one way that some communities are doing that. And then the final thing is tax-based, so that's what we're using now, where households pay for waste collection and disposal through their taxes. So Mass DEP, the environmental agency of the state, is doing a lot of data collection about waste collection in different communities. So we're lucky to have a lot of data from many towns, all towns across Massachusetts. And Mass DEP says that pay-as-you-throw is the single most effective way to reduce municipal solid waste. It creates a lot less trash. On average, households generate 29% less trash in municipalities with pay-as-you-throw. It means there's a lot more diversion. So you're still creating waste, but you're properly diverting it. So we see in pay-as-you-throw communities, solid waste tonnage is reduced by 25% to 50%. And that's because you're seeing rates increase for recycling, diversion, donation, and composting. And when that's looked at across all the different communities in Massachusetts, you see a really huge impact. If all Massachusetts communities switch to pay-as-you-throw models, we would see $48 million in savings and trash reductions of 566,000 tons. I like to think about pay-as-you-throw as a really equitable solution. It's how most of our services are paid for. Think about your water bill, your electricity bill, your receipt at the grocery store. You're paying for what you use. And so a household that does not create very much waste is not paying the average amount of kind of the average amount of that total cost. They're paying just for what they create. So I'm just going to go through 3 different examples of some of our peer communities that have pay-as-you-throw, so you can see what some of the different structures look like. So Concord is a community similar to ours, a bit smaller, but they started pay-as-you-throw back in 1992. They've been doing this for a very long time. And they have more of the full pay-as-you-throw model. So they have weekly curbside pickup of trash and recycling, and they have that 35 gallon cart, and they have a per collection fee every time that cart is collected. It's about $2 per collection, less than $2. And then they also pay an annual trash fee of $282 to cover the cost of the full program. In Concord, they produce about a little under 1,300 pounds of trash per household per year. For comparison, in Lexington, we're a little bit north of 1,500 pounds. So you can see that they're on average producing less waste than we are. Malden, a bit of a bigger community. They started pay-as-you-throw back in 2008, and they have a hybrid model. So they get the 35 gallon cart free. Any waste in that cart can be picked up for free. And then they have a number of options for pay-as-you-throw bags available for purchase for overflow trash. So you can get an 8 gallon, 15 gallon, 33 gallon bag. And in Malden, they have 1,380 pounds of trash per household per year. So again, a little less than here in Lexington. I think Brookline is a great comparison. They're a bit bigger than us, but a pretty similar community. They started pay-as-you-throw in 2017. They have weekly pickup for both trash and recycling. And again, they do the hybrid pay-as-you-throw, free 35 gallon cart. And then they have overflow bags of 30 gallon bags for $3.70. They also do that annual trash fee of $200. And Brookline has a really great number. They're just over 1,000 pounds of trash per household per year. And that's actually in comparison to before they did pay-as-you-throw, where they're at more like 1,400.
And I think it's just important to note, seeing some of these examples, there are a lot of different ways that you can do this type of a program. So it's not one size fits all, or it's not, we're gonna just do this. That's why we want to have the community engagement and have these meetings so we can talk about that. But there's different ways to structure it, and we're going to try to look for the best way that fits Lexington. So it's good to have these comparisons to see what's going on around us. But again, we want to look at structuring something for Lexington that's going to work for the residents of Lexington, but also meet all of the requirements, regulations, and things that we have to as we go.
So as I said, Mass DEP collects a lot of data on this. And this chart kind of gives you a comparison of Lexington's per household waste production compared to the average of communities using different sorts of programs. So the yellow here is Lexington at 1,512 pounds per household. And then this lower bar is the full pay-as-you-throw drop-off. So you not only put it in a program bag, but you also drop it off at a transfer station. This next one is, again, full pay-as-you-throw, but it's collected at the curbside, more like 1,100. And then the next bars kind of illustrate that the size of the bin really matters. If you have a large bin, people will fill it. And so 35-gallon cart, 1,300, a bit more for a 48-gallon cart. And then the largest one there is 64 gallons, 1,686. I know you cannot see the details of this map. We'll zoom in just a second, but this is from 2022, Mass DEP's data on pounds per household per year across all of our towns. And they're looking at which towns are using pay-as-you-throw in order to kind of make that comparison. So if you can zoom in to Lexington, here we are, and the crosshatch are communities that have pay-as-you-throw. So you can see kind of closer into Boston, there aren't as many. There's a lot of communities that are producing a whole lot of waste. But then if you go west a bit, you're seeing Concord, Acton, Littleton, that have pay-as-you-throw programs, and they're producing a lot less waste. Lincoln is somehow just killing it on their own. But really the idea of this is not to be punitive in any way. It's supposed to be an easy thing to do, actually. So the whole program could be structured in a way that most households are never exceeding the limit because there are all these diversion potential. So if you have a very large recycling bin, anything that's recycled, you have the space to recycle it. Food waste collection, that's about 30 to 40% of most households' waste, and it's the heaviest portion that can be diverted through the compost program. And then curbside collection of textiles, white goods, and mattresses. None of that can go in the waste stream now, or the trash stream now. So continuing to take advantage of those curbside offerings. And then again, drop off of recycling at Hartwell. So if you have a lot of oversized cardboard boxes one week, you would be able to drop that off at Hartwell. All that making it possible to produce less than 35 gallons of trash each week. Actually, go back really quickly. One final piece on this is Mass DEP actually estimates that in communities that are using pay-as-you-throw, around 5 to 10% of households in hybrid pay-as-you-throw systems ever end up needing to buy an overflow bag. So for the most part, people are really able to fit in that smaller bin. And I kind of mentioned this idea before, but it's important to realize that waste collection now is not free. You are paying property taxes if you own a home in Lexington, and those taxes are funding our waste collection program. So this shows the fiscal year 2025 waste budget. There's collection and hauling. That includes the mattress and box spring recycling, textile recycling, white good recycling, and then those disposal fees that are based on tonnage and recycling process fees. So that's around $4 million. If you divide that by the number of households in Lexington, that's a cost of about $330 per year. So that gives you a sense of what you're paying today for trash. And so you could see on some of the examples, there was, $200 or $300 annual fee and maybe some overflow bag costs. So that was pay-as-you-throw. I want to just touch on quickly automated collection as well, because that was one of the other strategies. So automated collection is using the kind of claws on a truck to automatically tip the bin into the waste, into the truck. You can see it over there. Some benefits of this is it's a lot more efficient. There's less idling by trucks. So if you have greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with that, it can also increase the efficiency of the truck. You may need fewer workers, and it can hit a lot more households on its route. It requires standard size trash bins, so it's a good strategy to pair with pay-as-you-throw because you would need those standard size bins. It kind of makes sense to switch to automated at the same time. And old bins that are used now that maybe aren't these wheeled carts could be collected for reuse for leaf collection or other things. So that was a lot of information about kind of what's happening in other communities. We want to have these sorts of presentations so we can understand how could this work in Lexington and what is kind of feedback or excitements about this or concerns. So if you can just go, Dave, to the next slide. We did a survey now earlier in the year. We had a group of Tufts grad students helping us kind of start to evaluate some of these strategies. And through that, we did an initial survey of kind of residents' willingness or support of these actions. So we did a survey and we got about 1,500 responses. And you can see there was really great support for, this one is curbside composting and automated collection. This yellow is actually willingness to pay, and this was willingness if it's free. So really high support for both of these. And then the trash metering or pay as you throw and alternating week collection was a bit more split, but still the majority of participants in that survey supported both of those as well. So now we want to hear from you. We have a number of discussion questions, and I don't know how we're doing on time. If we want to kind of go, we can go through each of these, or I can read them off and have folks share. Maybe I'll do that. So our questions for you is, if you don't currently compost, what's stopping you? Do you think you could fit your weekly waste in a 35-gallon bin today? And if not, what would help you do so? What bulky items do you dispose of most often that you would like reuse collection available for? And then what additional supports are needed to help you find a second life for your unwanted items? What do you like or dislike about the automated waste collection? What do you like or dislike about the pay-as-you-throw model? And then finally, what additional supports are needed to help you identify ways to reduce waste at the source, so produce less trash in general?
So yeah, we want to open it up to you all to ask questions. This is being recorded, and we do have great volunteers that are going to keep track of the questions, and so that we can compile those and get that back out. And we really, and again, we want this to be engaging and to see what where we need to go with some type of program like this. That down the road we're going to be forced into some of these decisions. So. I think we'll open it up, and anybody that wants to go and, yeah.
I have a question about composting. I don't have a problem with that. I've been composting for the 47 years I've lived in my house. I also, at this point, only put trash out every other week, and the bin is only half full. But how do you convince someone to participate in the curbside composting when they cook a lot, make a lot of scrap, but say, I wouldn't have enough because it all goes down the disposal? That has not been addressed. How do you convince people that using the disposal system has an impact on the environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we hear a lot, actually, and a couple different reasons why it's better to compost than put it down your disposal. One, extra electricity use, if that's a motivating factor. You're wasting energy by doing that. But the larger piece of that is when you put food waste down the disposal, it goes into our sewer system and it has added strain on that system. So the sewer processing, they have to kind of pull out all this extra sludge. And I don't have kind of the data behind that of, added costs of that. But it does add a lot of extra strain on that system.
Yeah.
I'd also like to add that I think some of the things that we're trying to tell people is, as Dave so expertly said, food waste has a resource. There's so many nutrients in there, right? So putting them, when you put them in the wastewater stream, you're just like when you're putting them in the incinerator, which is even worse, but they're both bad because they're using resources that are unnecessary. You are wasting that resource. Turning it into compost is turning it into soil, which will help create better food on farms, reduce flooding, sort of, make our soil healthy again. So,
And I'll just add, the way the program is set up, where you have the smaller bin that you can keep right in your kitchen, it's a matter of, instead of putting it down to disposal, you just turn to the left and put it in the bin, and then that goes into the green cart that gets collected at the curb, and that's a weekly service, so, and that can hold a lot of food waste, because food waste will compact, it's just the weight of it, when you have to take it to, the incinerator, so.
Just one other, just real quick, you can't put bones down your disposal either, right? So that all can be composted. Well, you shouldn't, I suppose.
Oh, sorry.
I have a question about the number of households in Lexington that are covered by these programs and the ones that aren't. There are apartment dwellings, right? And commercial places who have their own private pickup, right? Okay, 2 questions. How do you make sure they're following the rules, like not throwing mattresses out in apartment buildings? And 2, and this, I hate to bring this up, but if in 5 years we have all these new apartment buildings that are being proposed under the MBTA community, you're gonna have even more apartments who are not part of this program. Have you thought about, I mean, I'm puzzled by how we deal with those communities.
Yes. I can touch on that for the composting side of things. So for our compost program, we want it to be accessible to any resident who lives in Lexington. So we are working with some of those apartments or larger housing complexes to get a larger commercial size toter in those areas. So places like Brookhaven, so the Avalons, a couple other facilities are already joining that program. So if you live in one of those facilities and you want to bring composting there, we're starting to do more of that outreach, but we want to start that at more places. I don't know if there's other stuff than composting.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on so the trash and recycling, they are still under the same mandates that the state puts out. As far as anything future that's coming down, as the town, we're looking at that right now as to how that's gonna work, what could be provided or not provided, whether we now extend the service to some of those facilities or not, so that's still being talked about. So we're not on those sites, so, you know, we're not monitoring what they're putting in for trash and recycling, but they are under the same mandate, so if they bring a load up to the incinerator and that load is contaminated, that load gets rejected. So the incinerator doesn't just take it, they'll say, no, this stuff can't be taken in, so.
What
So
is
when
rejected, recycling or?
their trash can be rejected, the recycling can be rejected, so, yeah.
What happens if the trash gets rejected?
Then they have to figure it out, so there's things that you know, again, we can't monitor those facilities, but there are things that are in place that they should be following, so.
Well, the reason I'm asking this is I happen to live in an apartment complex now, after many years in a single family home, and there's 130 apartments, so it's good size. I will tell you that the dumpsters are full of food all the time. People, and there's no composting up there or anything. So what, I'm really, I don't know what to do. And one of the things is that every household gets that little thing, but there's such turnover in these places that when new people coming in, they don't get your thing. So I would suggest working with the management to make sure they get those flyers out.
So that's one of the things that we're working on, like we went to Brookhaven and talked about the program and got it implemented there. So we're more than happy to go to any of these other facilities and make that,
I'll go with
yeah,
you.
and make that connection, so.
Maybe you've answered this. I was wondering how enforcement, because you talked about a state mandate of, I don't know what it was here, of reducing the food waste, right? Or,
Right now, it's just for the commercial, larger commercial.
yes, but that's,
Yes.
I'm talking now Brookhaven and where you are, I suppose. How do they enforce that? Except maybe what you're saying, incinerators reject the trash, but how do they know how much of that is food
Yeah,
waste?
no, they wouldn't.
So the DEP, as a number of, it's a great question, actually. has a program to do enforcement, and they basically work with haulers, both food waste haulers, trash haulers. They work with haulers to try and identify those places. They're not everywhere all the time. They're not hiding around the corner looking at what's being thrown in the dumpsters at Margaret's complex. But so they're not catching everything, certainly, but they do work with haulers to try and identify those kinds of problems. What we also know, and what the DEP knows, Meg's done a great job of getting and partnering Dave with people from DEP, is that they do have a lot of data. And once you sort of put that out there and say, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing, you get quite a lot of compliance just by saying this is what you need to be doing, and by having meetings like this, and by answering questions and letting the community know. So it's certainly not a perfect thing. I mean, we don't expect our police officers to catch everybody who's speeding through the town all the time, but they do their best. They do communication. It's a very similar thing. So it's a really, really great question.
I had a couple in the back first, and then I'll come back towards the front.
There are a couple of things you didn't address. That one is construction waste from small projects. You have a couple of boards, you have PVC pipe, you have a porcelain sink or toilet. They're bulky, they don't fit in a bin, they don't fit in a bag. You hate to put a $5 trash fee on a board. So could you address that? And the other thing is, I don't understand recycling anymore, because the recycling, I put stuff, faithfully in the recycling bin, but it doesn't get recycled because, as you said, some things aren't, there's no market for it.
Right.
So it's really trash. That's correct.
Yeah, and they are looking at things like glass, for example, if there's other ways to use that. So I know that there's a lot of research going on in that regard, but you're correct. There are some things that they've taken out of the recycle. I'm gonna let Robert answer the one about the small construction waste.
The vendor, we do our, first of all, in Lexington, the three primary bulky items that people can regularly put out are carpet, clean wood waste, tied in bundles. We still accept that. It's just, that started before I was here. And would be furniture. Those are the three primary bulky items, and everything else that everything else. So residents still have a place to get rid of that clean wood waste and the carpet and the furniture. But the construction waste, we don't accept it. So in other words, if you put out, one of the things we've been struggling with is dealing with toilets, ceramic toilets. That's not considered solid waste, so that would not be accepted at the incinerator. So we work to inform residents on how they can properly dispose of that materials by contacting a vendor that would provide clean out for the household and those kind of items. So construction and demolition debris is not considered municipal solid waste, and other than the items that I mentioned, they would leave that pine and sticker it and so on.
The way to get rid of it here.
Hey folks, I'm Michelle Segola, State Representative here in this community, and I founded the Zero Waste Caucus in the legislature. And I just wanted to pick up on Margaret's question about enforcement at DEP and what's going on at the state. Just in September, there was a press release by the administration about the incredible progress we are making as a Commonwealth in reducing food waste. So it used to be 24% of the stream, and it's now down to 20%. There was a University of Texas study that was published in the magazine Science that quantified some of the reductions that we are making, and they are stepping up enforcement. That's part of what we're doing, is trying to help fund DEP adequately. They still need to get back to where they used to be, I think, in the 90s for staff capacity, and we are working on every year really trying to improve their capacity so that they can do their job more effectively. But it is working. We are excited about it. There's a long way to go for everybody, but composting is an incredible opportunity to reduce methane, which is one of the most potent greenhouse gas chemicals in our environment, and so we really have to do everything we can to do the composting. And just as a personal note, I put mine in my freezer when I have too much, because I often have 3 bags. a week, tiny little bags from my countertop, and it goes into the freezer, and then on Fridays I put it out in Black Earth, and it works just fine.
She had a question here.
So I think in terms of selling pay as you throw, people are gonna ask, well, do my taxes go down? You know, and, yeah, and that was the helpful.
I'm not answering that question.
They go up slower.
There is no good answer to that question, because if you did look, the cost of disposal still continues to go up. So, you know, the hope is that we get to a point where those kind of balance out, so that there won't be increases or major increases in that program, and that's really, you know, one of the goals that we have, along with all the other benefits that are there, is to try to get a better handle and try to control those costs better. So, you know, we can control some things, and these things will certainly help. But as those disposal costs keep going up, that's still a function of, we don't have control over what those are. So, I wouldn't say that you would see anything going down. The goal is to try to not have those larger, increases in the program. We had some other questions. I'll work my way back towards the front.
Hi there, I'm Rachel, excuse me, full disclosure, I've been working with the green teams on composting in the schools for a decade now. And it's been really amazing to just see the kids sort of socialize these changes, but I have lots of questions, I'm gonna try and limit. One is, have you guys looked into like a swap shed? I know Watertown, Arlington, a number of other towns are doing that. Seems like there's like the perfect shaded area at Hartwell under all those beautiful solar canopies where things can stay dry, like furniture. And all the other random stuff that I see out on the curb that my husband gets mad when I bring home in my car and it's sitting in my basement waiting to be like refinished. There's like a lot of good stuff.
Let me answer that one first. So one, we can't do anything under the ground solar that's out there, because that's not the town's per se. So the two larger ones, we can look at that. I know Robert has looked into and was trying to work with some companies that do that, that type of a program. So we're continuing to see if there's avenues there. So it is something that we are looking at.
Okay. Sorry, I guess one of the other questions was, is around the cost for trash. Seems like such a drop in the bucket relative to our real estate taxes. And the idea of, I'm assuming that the idea of using a toter as a sort of a base fee is to kind of make it more palatable to people than going with a full pay-as-you-throw program. But then what's to actually incentivize people to really keep reducing, or say you forget to put your trash out one week, or you then penalize, like, I don't know, I've been to town like Newbury where the transfer station, you pay $1 for every bag you put in the trash, but your recycling's free. And I know my stepmother was helped her with her trash, and she was really like trying to sort it out to make sure she didn't have to pay those $2 for her trash bags. Even though it's a small amount of money, it really seemed to psychologically make a shift.
Yeah, so those are all the things that we're gonna be talking about and looking at and trying to come up with what we think will, you know, be the best fit for Lexington. So, good questions. Yes.
So I had two questions. I used to go to the compost place and pick up stuff to put in my, mulch or whatever to put in my garden. But then I got really paranoid that people were using grub bats and that I was picking up bad chemicals when do I have to worry about that? Is my question clear? No.
Robert, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, through the composting process that we utilize, we get to a thermophilic temperature that burns off. So it's north of 135 degrees for 3 straight days. Now, even though we don't take food waste. So we do process a big swath of 50,000 cubic yards a year, but through the temperature process, we burn off a lot of that material. And it's best to divert as much as we can through the 8 hazardous waste collections that we have, in which we take pesticides and so on. But we get our materials tested, and we check it for X, Y, and Z, heavy metals and all those kinds of items. I'm sorry.
I have one other quick question. Probably at least a third of my recycling is, I go from my mailbox to the recycling bin. Can I get rid of that
You're not alone in that. I think in the course of a week, I might take 2 things inside the house and everything else gets ripped up and put in the recycling. So I think that's a function of just the different, the industry that's out there that just sends tons and tons of papers and donate to this and look at this and whatnot. So that's a much bigger picture. So one minute, I'll go, somebody up here, Evelyn?
Actually, I have spent hours on the phone calling places saying, please take my name off your list. And it actually works. It makes a big difference. I've really cut back on the number of catalogs and junk. Anyway, that's an aside. I will date myself by just asking about the problem Lexington had with pay as you throw many years ago. Has that been resolved so that we legally can do that?
So, no, that's still being worked out and worked through, so that is not, so that's something that would have to be, taken into account. And the town council and things are working on that end of it. So, yes.
That's still a problem. I have one other quick question. When you put textiles into the Bay State bins, do the schools or anybody get money for that?
Yes.
And is that well publicized? Because I know I tell people this and they're all very surprised at that concept.
It's probably not as well publicized as we should have it, for that. And Robert did say that even the curbside, textile pickup, they send money to the schools as well. So those are things that we will amplify in the presentations and get that information, out there. So, did you have a question? Did you have a question?
Okay, yeah, the schools, I'll just add to that, they take stuff down, little handbags, shoes, all kinds of stuff too. Yeah, the question that I wanted to ask is, restaurants and businesses, as far as I know, they are not part of municipal waste, right? They have to take care of their own. I've heard from businesses that like, if they're renting one place that doesn't even have recycling, they just don't have it. Is that something the town is looking at helping connect with and as part of overall sustainability as opposed to cost?
Yeah, it is a tough thing because our zero waste plan was focused mainly on residential pickup, since that's what we have direct control on. But in that plan, we also did identify, like better outreach and education. I know there are a couple businesses in the town center that are composting, but I think one thing the town could do is kind of better outreach, to let them know about the options, and at least, make them aware of the options.
I'm gonna go here first. Take your time.
We see that the food waste week is a matter of trying to measure how much is removed from our waste stream. But I find the fact that we just simply say it's gonna go to composting rather, inane. And so I think there's so much more energy in terms of encouragement for people to actually food waste, if we better understood what is being done with that waste. Many years ago, we had the anaerobic digester schemes. I suspect this is still some way. So I'll leave it as a question. What is Black Earth doing with the food waste once it gets it?
So Black Earth is processing that food waste into a compost that they then, some of it I don't know if they were doing 1 bag or 2 bags, goes back to the residents that are doing it. And then they commercially market it as a compost product. So they are processing. They've actually opened a couple of facilities, Robert.
They've opened a new one up in Manchester by the Sea, in which they're taking in at Colmingle.
Yeah, so they partnering with this company, they actually take it and turn it into a usable product. So it doesn't go, just somewhere off to the side. So they do that. Yes, it's a good question.
And it's actually, sorry, can I add, David, that they actually also partner with local farms, and local farms, especially some that are creating food for needy communities. So they're getting their nutrient-rich soil, nutrient-rich black earth, that they're creating, and they're making sure that they're getting it to farms, so that those farms don't need to use as much chemical fertilizer. They allow the ground to hold more water, grow better, more nutrient-rich food, and reduce flooding risk. So, you have a great question, but it's like, how do we get all of that into like a couple of words that you'll remember and that the community will remember? So we do need to do a better job. There's so many really great things that wonderful black earth, black gold, whatever you want to call it, is just really, it's really the only true, sort of recycling system, right?
So the point was, I knew the answer to the question. But the point is that the community doesn't see that. Doesn't really-
Yeah.
You're right.
Help us do a better job of putting that in the marketing. Thank you.
Hi, there's a lot of things to be said for, page to throw, but I haven't been able to think of it in the last 25 years. We had a program, it was unwelcomed in the community. We ended up having a vote. It was over 2-1 to go back to the system we had. Lexington is one of the best recycling communities in the state, and I don't think you disagree with that. I think we do it on our own. One of the real problems with page and throw is that people don't have less trash. They find other avenues to put it. It might be the recycling. That contaminates and degrades the recycling that's being gathered. As a matter of fact, I'd be curious to know in this day and age, because I haven't been paying attention, what the percentage of actually recycled materials we send off the curb actually has a second life. It seems that percentage is getting less and less and less. If I went back to the 80s when Dick's Fires and we started the recycling thing, where we had paper, when we all had newspapers come to our house, there was a tremendous amount of paper. That had value. I don't even know it has value anymore. One thing I would like to mention quickly is I really respect and appreciate what David, Robert, and you, Maggie, have been doing in a reasonable community effort to do recycling. I hope it's worth the energy and the time you're putting into it. I question it, but God bless us, I hope we can get it. With respect to waste, particularly in the school department, the best way to control or limit the waste is don't tear down the high school. So.
Not the full one, that's not funny.
One more thing, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Years ago.
All right.
Let's just get back to trash. Okay?
Yes, we'll get back to trash.
Because the high school is not trash. David, can we get locations around town, to pick up the cardboard like we had not that many years ago? Because it was, I think that was great. You always had one by the police station, Grace Chapel had one. Why not put one at DPW next to your food bin? Because I think people would tend to be inclined to take it on the way to shop or just shopping and put it in there.
Yes, we are looking at other avenues where we can logically put those, so thank you for that question. And just to touch on, so a lot of things have changed in the 25 years, and I think one of the things that, I was new to the department at the time when the page and throw went in, but we want to have a lot more community engagement than what that process had, and that's why we're having these discussions. So like I said, there's nothing that's decided, there's nothing that's, we're doing this tomorrow. We want to have that engagement, get that feedback, and see what we can make work, because some of these things are going to be mandated by the state, and we want to be out ahead of that, not where we're forced into something that either doesn't work for the community or ends up being more costly. So we'll continue to have those, and I appreciate that. We'll continue to have those discussions.
There are selectmen that promised they wouldn't try page or throw till I'm dead.
Thanks for changing your own.
And I'm glad for that. Yes.
What did you say?
I just want to add one point to that. I think it's a good question of, if you're doing kill as you throw, is waste being put incorrectly somewhere else? That's a very valid concern. I think the difference of where we are now compared to 25 years ago, is we're starting to implement the diversion pieces first. So we already have compost in place. We already have a lot of bulky items that are diversion. So that's really how we're thinking about it, of making sure this is possible now. And that's why we're looking at it again now.
Here and then.
I didn't want to divert the conversation, which was so good until about a minute ago, but at Brookhaven, we're very much concerned at the moment, along with other issues of trash, with the substantial content of single-use plastics, really plastics, in the waste stream, and whether there's a way we could better control that. Are you folks thinking anything about those kinds of programs?
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One, plastic is the hardest material to recycle. There's much, compared to like glass and cardboard, there's a smaller rate of plastic that truly gets recycled. So the best way to address that is go before you're even using the materials. Use glass bottles, bring your own water bottle, things like that is really the solution there. But there are kind of some exciting new programs. I'll shout out Lexington Zero Waste Collaborative of doing the Lex Zero to Go takeout containers, programs like that. If you order at Royal India Bistro, you can get a metal container instead of a plastic one. So we definitely want to be pushing those sorts of innovative solutions, but really stop it at the source is the. Oh yeah, and yes, even more relevant. We passed at last town meeting a water bottle ban for single-use water bottles under a liter or smaller, for the sale in Lexington.
Market basket.
And so that goes into effect January 1st.
You can go outside, but it's
Yeah, you can order them.
yeah, but it's a start. Yeah, we had to stop selling.
Hi, I just wanted to respond to your comments about the pay-as-you-throw program back in 2001, I think it was. Because I think there's a couple points that haven't been made. One is that the population here in Lexington has changed drastically from 2001. I think I read a statistic that 60% of the residents in Lexington have moved into town since 2015. So those people haven't had a chance to have their say as to what sort of program they want. Also, I think Maggie's slide of showing where Lexington is on its waste disposal, we were actually at the second highest level of waste disposal. So I don't think we're doing a good job. And then finally, as Maggie suggested, we are trying to implement the composting, which is the food waste composting, which is the biggest component that's in our trash. So there's a lot of things we can do. I would just like to commend the town for its website on what you can and cannot recycle. I was amazed to go in there and find that I can write in any item that I think I can or cannot recycle, and it will tell me whether I can or cannot recycle it, right? Am I right? And it's quite expensive, so I want to thank you for that.
So that's a great, I'm glad you're using Recyclopedia. It's actually, thank you to Rep. Socolo, it's actually a state Recycle Smart MA program. But I agree with you, it's really, really great, and all, like all cities and towns should be sort of making this available to everybody. I know that there's a lot, and that there was someone in the back who was just really beside themselves about, plastics and recycling. But I think Maggie's point is, and to that it's really from a recycling perspective, it's the worst kind of recycling. It's downcycling, right? It's not like recycling of food. It's not like recycling of cardboard, right? Robert, cardboard and aluminum, metals, they still have really, really high values. So to the extent that we can try and communicate, and thank you for your feedback, how get ideas, how can we reduce that plastic use is really important.
One of the big things that for me is what in the way of paper can be recycled? Because it's not always clear. The butter boxes, as I understand it from your website, you can't do that because they're coated
Yep.
with plastic because they go in the refrigerator. But the tea boxes that have a similar feel, I believe, can be put into the paper. Am I right? So, you know, it's interesting, the different aspects of this. Thank you.
I just have one question, Michelle, and I'll jump back there.
And then we
Yep.
What do you do with the asphalt that's listed?
Yeah, I wondered about that too.
It's, you know, C and D.
So in our construction projects, some of that gets ground and used as a road base to start, so they do kind of recycle in place as they go. If it's not able to be used, then we leave that to the contractor to work with an asphalt company, and they handle it that way. That's on the town projects. I can't say what happens at homes as to what goes, but if it's C and D, then there is a process to deal with that. Oh,
I just wanna say, we have a bin at Hartwell, and if you've ever been to the office, the double wide office, all of the materials that have been used in landscaping come from that drop-off bin for small pieces of asphalt and concrete. It's amazing what Charlotte Nardone has done in front of the double wide office trailer. So we do have a bin that if you have a piece of rough asphalt or something like that, it's what's called an aggregate, and we can end up sending that, what we don't reuse, in this case that we've been able to reuse, then we can get rid of that as an aggregate material. So it does get disposed of properly, but traditionally asphalt is not considered municipal solid waste. It's just something that we've worked with to try to divert so it doesn't go into our yard waste. Because usually a lot of people, when they clean up their driveways, they're gonna put that stuff all in with the yard waste. They do.
So in the essence of time, I'm gonna go to Michelle, then we'll close the discussion for today. But certainly, like we mentioned before, this is just the beginning of a series of going outreach and getting that feedback and input. If you think of anything in the interim, certainly, shoot an email to Maggie or myself, and, we'll add those questions to the mix. So Michelle.
I want to thank you, Dave, for this incredible presentation, and Maggie, and all of you for attending, and everyone's energy in this room, because this is really a vitally important issue. I just wanted to talk briefly about the quality of the recycling stream, since a number of us noted that plastic doesn't get recycled very effectively. One of the things that most people don't know is that the highest commodity values for our recycling stream come from those that are collected through the bottle deposit system. So most of us have been trained to just toss our 5-cent disposables, recyclables into our bin because it's easy and it's only 5 cents. And what we absolutely need to go back to redeeming those bottles, because the plastic and the glass that is recycled through those systems fetch a much higher price. And they do because we're not combining them with the chemicals that are in like our soaps and our household chemicals, and those containers, when thrown into the recycling bin and combined with other plastics, make the plastic fairly toxic. So if you really want to get your stream recycled, use the bottle deposit system, start bringing things back. The state is working on increasing the number of items that will be subject to the bottle deposit system. That's one of our highest priorities in the Zero Waste Caucus. It did pass the Senate this session. We're very much hoping that we're going to get it next session. I see you guys clapping in the front row. But we're going to expand the bottle deposit system to more different types of beverage containers, because right now many of them are not subject to the system. That's our hope. So just start taking your bottles back if you can, if you want things to truly be recycled. Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present this morning. And also, again, this is just the beginning of the conversation. So give it back to Margaret.
Thank you so much. This was way more than I even anticipated, so thank you very much. Before we break, because we have to be out by 11, I want to thank all of you for coming, and also tell you that our next First Friday will be December 6th, I believe. Yeah, December 6th, with Representative Michelle Socolo, Senator Cindy Freeman, and maybe Mike Barrett. I haven't been able to pin him down to come and talk about what's been going on in the legislature. And that, by the way, the raising the deposit from 5 to 10 cents got taken out of the climate bill, right? Yep. Oh, I was very disappointed about that. Yeah. Before you leave, I just have a couple of league things I'd like to bring to your attention. In the back on the table are some handouts, and one of them is this. It's this big white sheet. It says the do's and don'ts of election disinformation. It's very interesting to read about what you can do, how you can detect disinformation. So pick one up and look at it. It's English on one side, Spanish on the other. The other one is this one is a little bit late now. It's do you have a plan to vote? You better have a plan to vote because it's coming up. You're not going to have much more time left. The in-person voting ends today, and early voting, and the in-person would be on Tuesday. And if you mail-in one, make sure you mail it in time or drop it off at the town hall. And then finally, this is promoting the league. Please consider joining with us. We have a very vibrant group of people in this town, and I just remembered the League of Women Voters was the one who spearheaded the original curbside waste recycling collection. Remember that with Judy Marshall and Joyce Halls? I mean, I have old pictures in the league scrapbooks about this. So the league has a long history with recycling and waste reduction. So just thought I'd throw that out there. And with that, I want to thank everybody. Is there any cake left back there, Mark? If you want to grab a piece of cake on your way out, and have a happy weekend and